Hey there everyone, and welcome back to another Escape from Tarkov new player experience slash new wipe video. Basically, I'm putting this one out as an updated version of my original guide. We have fairly substantial reports that a wipe is coming, hopefully in the next couple of days, so I thought what better time to go ahead and update the content for this, just to give new players that sort of edge and a bit of knowledge that might help them survive some raids. Before I go ahead and click play, I have reset my character so you'll be able to see what a starting stash looks like. First thing I'll do though is have a quick chat regarding what items, well, what resources I suppose I use, or used to use I should say, when I was a newer Tarkov player. First up is the EFT Wiki. That's one of the main ones that you'll be using, where you can go and check out all of the quests and especially the quest items that you'll need for some quests. So if you have a look at these images, we've got quest items and we've got quest items that need to be found in raid. Found in raid is basically anything that you find in raid and take out of raid successfully while alive without it being a walkthrough, which means basically you need to get, I think it's 200 or 250 experience, which is killing a scav, I suppose, or staying into the raid for 7 minutes. So it has been changed to a lower amount now. I believe it's 200 EXP in 7 minutes, something like that. So basically, this is what's needed at some stage. So if you're in your early wipe sort of games and you find some cigarettes, you know that mechanic needs 3 of each of these types of cigarettes. So you can go ahead and pop those into your bag. So if we go back to quests, you can also check out the list of quests based on the trader. So if you need to do a quest such as, we'll use one of the early ones from Therapist as examples, finding the hidden water in dorms. Well, basically this will tell you where to go. So it's room 206 in the 2-story dorms. And as soon as you walk in, after unlocking the door, you walk inside to complete the objective, and then it's done. So basically, it gives you a full overview of the quest and what you need to do, which can be really handy for a newer player. The next thing I'll mention is the Hideout. Basically, the Hideout is where you can produce various items, and typically early wipe, most people try to rush the Hideout. I myself don't. Just because I can usually find most of my quest items, and it's a good way to make money selling the hideout items if they're found in raid. So as an example, the lavatory you can see at level 1, which will cost you 2,000 rubles, and now it costs items. So previously a lot of these, such as the generator, it used to only cost rubles, but now you need a spark plug as well. So it encourages you to get into raid and actually look for these items instead of just paying money and rushing. So, spark plugs, stuff like that, they're going to go for decent money early on in the wipe. Now, moving on, we can see the photo from up here, which is the items to keep for your hideout. And we'll go ahead and just mark out that most of these early wipe will be very valuable. There are a few sort of caveats to that, but any electronics are typically going to be very valuable, and your hardware items, medical and valuables not so much, apart from like LEDX, which is always worth money, and ophthalmoscopes, and even the sodium chlorides, but everything else seems to come fairly okay. So moving on to the next resource is the map resource. This is the customs map as seen by MapGenie.io. I've put on the filters that I think a new player would use. Basically, if you go into an offline raid and you sort of want to play around, figure some things out, figure out where your extracts are, you've got your filters on the left here. If you want to learn like a loot run and you want to know where the caches are, or caches, depending how you want to pronounce it, you can trigger that on there. You can also go through and, if you like jackets, and jackets have been giving you good keys, so, you want to loot the jackets, by all means, trigger that on. I've left the scavs and, well, essentially the enemies, the bosses, scav snipers, and the scavs. New players probably don't need to see the Easter eggs or the miscellaneous items, but that is essentially it. So this gives you a good overview of the map. You can see fairly clearly where things are, and a lot of the landmarks you'll see are pretty easy to spot too. So customs, which is probably going to be one of your starting maps because there's quests on it. It's a fairly straightforward map. You spawn on one side, have to push to the other to extract, and vice versa. There are extracts in the middle now, which sort of makes it a bit contested, which is good for PvP, and it's good for sneaking out. The only one that I'd give you the advice on is the ZB13. You need a factory exit key to open, and you need the power turn on, which is in this warehouse here. So you turn on the power here, then you sort of run around and go into and under the fortress, and that's pretty much it. And the Dorm's vehicle extract, which is 7,000 rubles. So you can go up when you've got 7,000 rubles on you. It can be in your secure container. It doesn't matter. Press F on the car, and within a minute it'll extract you. The other extracts that are sort of up or down, I suppose, are Smuggler's Boat, which is seen here, but it's only up if there's a fire, and RUAF Roadblock, which should be up if there's a light on the roadblock, but that's been inconsistent, and sometimes I've had the extract timer hit 0 and not extracted, so if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Same with the ZB 1012, which is here. The light on top doesn't exactly mean that it's open. Usually, like it should, but I don't know. It's always been a bit glitchy. Moving on to the final resource. Also, this does have all the other maps, I should mention. You can sign up for the Pro Access for Reserve. Realistically, you don't need to do quests on Reserve for Kappa. Oh, well, actually you do. Yeah, you need to kill Scav Boss and Scav Boss guards there. But that'd be like later after you've had a bit of experience. So I'd leave Reserve and Labs for a while and just focus on the other 5 maps. That's where the majority of questing will be until you hit about level 30, 35, somewhere there. So moving on to the final resource, again, these will all be linked in the description of the video, is the No Food After Midnight ammo guide. No Food After Midnight's a Tarkov player. I believe he streams as well, and they've created this amazing resource. It's always been good for me. I'm a fairly numbers guy. I'm fairly numbers driven, so I do like to see the damage that I'm putting out, the penetration that I need, and similar. So if we go through here, the main things you'll be looking at are damage and your penetration values, and just going down the list, per 10 penetration value, it should beat that armor. So as in 10 penetration should always, or should have a bloody good chance of going straight through tier 1 armor. 20 penetration should go through tier 2 armor fairly successfully, and so on and so forth. So early wipe, penetration's not so much of a big thing until you get like 2 weeks in, when everyone's running level 4 at least. And then, high 30s will really look after you, but again, not many full face shields will be in use, so you can get away with lower penetration ammo and just shooting heads, which is typically what I go for. Scrolling down, you can look at whatever ammos you want. The main ones I'll focus on, just because they'll be what I can sort of show you guys, is the PS ammo in the 7.62x39 caliber. This is a fairly standard AK round. AKs also come in the 5.45x39mm, but you don't really have any good ammo options for them early on. So the higher caliber, yes, the lower caliber, not so much. One of the examples I'll show you is a USEC as well. Basically, you start with M4s, so you've got this M855 ammo, which is sort of similar to PS. The less pen does hurt it a bit when it comes to face shields and the effectiveness of it, but it's not too bad a sort of sting. Did get recently nerfed. But yeah, these are the ammo types. You can go through it at your leisure, because as I said, I'll link it below. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The M855, the PS in the 7.62x39, and the 9x19mm in the PSTGZH are the main ones that you'll be seeing until you get pretty much to level 10. So we will go now to the Tarkov launcher and hit play, and let it go through its business there. Basically, all I've done on this account, because it has been reset, is what did I do? I examined a couple of things, and I did move a couple of things and move them back. So it should essentially be like a new character. Basically, this comes up, you'll get a splash screen saying what language do you want it in. So I'm guessing if you're watching this, it'll be English, and then you get to choose your character, whether you're Bear, which is the Russian private military contractors, or USEC, which is the NATO private military contractors. So the choice doesn't overly matter at the moment. There might be lore added into the game at some point in the future, in which case bears are probably the good guys, so I would stick with them if you've watched the Raid series on YouTube. But we'll go ahead and have a look at what we've got here and sort of show you from there. The only other thing is picking your character's face, which most of them are drop dead gorgeous, I'll say, and the voice. So I chose USEC 2, which I think his name is Chris, mainly because some of the voice lines are just absolutely hilarious. So when you get in, this is the starting screen. We'll go ahead and have a look at our character. So you've got your tabs up the top here. That's essentially my guy, what he looks like. Don't take notice of the 2100 hours I've had this this wipe. Just avoid that. And basically, yeah, this shows your progression, shows everything. All you'll use in a raid is essentially your gear and your health, and maybe your tasks. And yeah, this is basically the standard setup. Actually, it's not the standard setup because it had the hat on. Sorry. And it had the cheese there as well. So that's my bad. Anywho, and it had those off. Yeah, that's essentially it. So anyway, this is essentially your start. Depending on what version of the game you have, you've got a secure container. This is called the Gamma container. It's what you get from Edge of Darkness. It's a 3x3. Standard edition accounts have a 2x2, which means it's only 4 slots, and I think one of the others has a 2x3. Going through, the Gamma container is essentially, or your secure container, always comes out of raid with you. It's good to have your consumables in there because you can't insure them. So basically, when you go into a raid, you get the option to insure, which I can always just click here, right click and insure, and basically you can select your trader. So Prapor returns his insurance after 24 to 36 hours, and Therapist returns after 10 to 20 hours. She does cost more, but she also keeps it for several days. Prapor tends to take your stuff if you haven't logged on after, say, 3 days, whereas Therapist, I think she keeps it for about a week. So I usually go with Therapist unless I'm lazy and don't want to use the drop-down menu. So anyway, clicking through here, this is your basic stash. Some armor, some rigs, some backpacks, some headsets, 2 M4s, shotgun, sniper rifle, which has the scope rings and a scope, so you can run that. A couple of helmets. You've got an armored rig here, which is quite nice. Some tier 4 armor there, which is also quite nice. Headsets, glasses, another backpack, an MDR, which, they're not bad. And meds, food and water, that's pretty much it. Then you count all the mags and all the ammo, and that's your starting stash. I'll just Alt-Tab quickly, because I do have the starting stash here for the bear as well. So it's essentially the same, but you're swapping out the M9 pistols for the MP443 Grach pistols, the MP5s for PP19s, and the M4A1s for the AK74Ms. Apart from that, it's pretty much the same. Just, Russian armor and Russian helmets, I suppose, instead of the NATO ones, and RPK instead of the MDR. But apart from that, they're pretty damn similar. So we'll jump back in, and I'll give you a brief overview of what I typically bring into a raid and sort of how I kick off the start of wipe. First thing I do is go to all the dealers, not that you need to go to all of them, but you can go to all the dealers and accept your tasks. So these are your starting quests. This one is just a don't worry about this one. This is a sort of end wipe content one where all of the scav bosses are on reserve. But debut, kill 5 scavs at customs and hand over 2 MP133 shotguns. So again, be on the lookout for those shotguns when you're in raid. Heading on over to therapist. She's got shortage, where she wants 3 found in raid Saliwa kits. And I'm pretty sure that's about it from tasks. Yep, you've got a level 5 one there. Peacekeeper won't give you any tasks until you unlock him via skier. Mechanic, you need to be level 2 to unlock Gunsmith Part 1, which will also give you Introduction, which lets you unlock Jaeger. And I don't think Ragman gives you anything yet until level 15. So, pretty straightforward, and, you know, you've got Prapor and Therapist at the moment. Now, the next thing that you probably noticed is all the blacked out items. These are items that you have not identified yet. You can identify them with middle mouse button, or you can right click and go examine. You also get experience for this, so good rule of thumb at the start of wipe is to go ahead and get your experience for all this, because your character can level up. You only have to get 794 experience, and trust me, if you go through all of your traders and you identify pretty much everything they've got, you will very quickly rack up that experience. Not that you'll rack up too much more, you'll definitely get to level 2, which means that you can get that quest from Mechanic here, which also lets you do the introduction quest, which grants Jaeger access. So if you're bit worried about running customs, you can try Woods, where that quest will take you. But yeah, just a little handy hint, I suppose. As for maps to go at the start of wipe, most people go customs just due to that task. So, you know, you need to kill 5 scavs there, so you got to get there. But it's really up to you. I did reserve for my first raid just because I wanted to loot filing cabinets, knowing that there would be some top tier loot that when I hit level 10 would net me some money. And you can sort of kill raiders on reserve, which, you know, gives you a fairly good amount of armor and decent weapons to start the wipe off with, I suppose. Mine, I didn't find any raiders, even though I hit the button to get some raiders, but it didn't overly matter anyway. I got some decent loot out, and it made me a lot of money when I got to level 10. So, moving on, we've got your weapons. So, if I go back to my character, yes, you can use an M4A1 with iron sights. It's not the best thing in the world, but, you know, to each their own, it's up to you. Same with MP5, you can run that with iron sights. MP5 is actually really nice with iron sights, they're fairly clean. Some people like it, some people don't. My recommendation would be, if you do know what you're doing, you might do some night runs with pistols to get, you know, stash loot that you can sell while knocking off those scavs progressing in the quest. But if you're not comfortable with night maps because you're a newer player, the MP5 is actually a great one, because you can go to Peacekeeper, you can buy the 30 rounder mags, so that would be my recommendation. Don't run these 20 rounders, just run a 30 rounder. I mean, they're cheap, it gets up your money spent with Peacekeeper, and yeah, you can go from there. There are a couple of guns that sort of stand out as early wipe monsters, so M4s are okay, and you can get a sight on them fairly easily. Shotguns are always great, especially if you can get some Magnum buckshot, which is a fairly decent headshot machine with most shotguns. So this isn't Magnum buckshot, this is just buckshot. This is just 7mm, but it's not hard to come by on scavs and similar. But my go-to weapon is actually this Vepa KM, or the VPO 136, whatever you want to call it, from Skier level 1. You can buy it for 32 grand, which is pretty cheap. You can also buy an 8R. Again, it's up to you. 8R is just an M4 that's single shot, essentially. Use the same round and all that sort of jazz. So, yeah, it's up to you whether you want to run that. But my go-to has always been the Vepa KM. Well, I won't say always has been, but it usually is. Now, with the Vepa KM, you can also buy a Bastion dust cover. So this is the Academia Bastion dust cover for another 6k. we'll go back to our character. Now, when you mod a weapon, you can take parts off and on. So we'll take the dust cover off, and you know, you've got the nice little spring there. But what you're actually after is this bastion dust cover. Actually, you need to take off the rear sight as well, which will be that one. And then you can put the bastion dust cover on. Now, what that allows us to do with this top rail is to affix a sight. So we can go to the dealers, go to Prapor, and he has this little beauty here, which is called the EKP, or the Cobra Reflex sight. You can buy it, and it's a little awful eye cup, which actually makes the picture clearer. I will say it makes the picture clearer, for about 10k total. It doesn't make your gun look like the best thing in the world, but it's a cheap way to get a red dot onto a gun, and especially this gun, because Prapor level 1 sells the 7.62 by 39 PS rounds. Now that's that 32 penetration I was talking about. It'll absolutely destroy players when they've got these Packer vests on, which are tier 2 armor. It will struggle against the tier 4s, such as the trooper armor and the armored rig like the AVS rig here. But again, if you nail a headshot, they're dead anyway, so it doesn't overly matter. Just going through other guns that you can purchase, I suppose. Prapor does some trades. I wouldn't do these trades mainly because you need these Tushonkas, like the small cans, not the big ones that you actually have in your stash. But you need 15 of these found in raid for a therapist quest. So I pretty much never do that for an AKM. They're pretty cheap by the time you get to level 10 anyway. Similar with the AKS-74U, it's one of the 545 AKs where you just won't have good ammo for it. And it's just not worth running. The bear is a little bit different. So the bear players, because they start with the AKs with ammo for them, you can sort of run them a little bit, and you can easily put a sight on. So all of these AKs and the PP19s that they come with, they have the dovetail mount, which means that if you go to Prapor, you can buy that exact same Cobra Reflex sight with a dovetail mount and pop it on. You can also chuck a 4x PSO scope on it with a dovetail mount. So, and you can trade for it as well for spark plugs. But it's just one of those things that's handy to know. And yeah, it'll definitely help you out, sort of thing. Going into Prapor, the other sort of 7.62 heavy hitter is the SKS. Its iron sights aren't the best. I'm not a huge fan of the gun itself, but it again runs that 7.62 by 39 PS rounds, which can absolutely monster players. It does have a 10 round internal clip, so if you want to top that up between raids, you actually have to take the clip out manually, whereas you know, some people don't know that, so take the clip out, then drag ammo onto that clip, and then put it back in the gun. Just a handy hint. With the SKS, you can also go to Peacekeeper here and buy the 20 round mags. So, you know, you can actually use it as a magazine instead of an internal mag. It's really up to you. I wouldn't recommend pretty much anything else. So the Keta, the Papa Shaft, these Makarov pistols, even the Grach, the TT, nah, wouldn't recommend any of that. The PP19, I wouldn't recommend that either because you need T-plugs found in raid. So if you die with them, maybe, but I'd rather just kick it off. You can also buy Mosins. Now, a Mosin is a scary gun. It's no longer the one-shot beast that it used to be, but you can run this with LPS GZH, which I believe one of the starting traders sells. I hate to be made a fool of by getting that one wrong. But yeah, basically you can, is it mechanic? No. Okay, maybe not. Maybe you do need to hit level 10. Oh no, there it is. Sorry, right in front of me. With Prapor, LPS GZH. So that's, I believe it's 46 pen or something like that. We'll just check. Makes it easier. 42. So again, hit someone in the chest with that. They're hurting like there's no tomorrow. Hit them again, they're dead. Hit them in the head, they're dead anyway. So you can run Mosins with iron sights. They're not too bad. They do cost a lot of money for what they are, just being a standard sort of bolt action. But, you know, there's a cult following of them. They're fairly accurate. They'll put the work in for you. So it's really up to you. Most new players, I just recommend the SKS because you're not really risking a lot. Just 20k plus, handful of rounds you're bringing into raid, which you'd need these in your pocket or rig. These rounds just to use them. But yeah, that's the starting weapons I would recommend. I wouldn't overly recommend getting anything from Peacekeeper. You can get more M9s if you run out, which again ups the dollars spent. So that's how you level traders. You need to meet their rep requirements, their dollars spent, and the level requirement. Um, Basically anything from Peacekeeper here is fairly bad. I wouldn't recommend the MP5K either, just because it's an MP5 that's worse because it doesn't have a stock. I wouldn't even recommend trading these, I think these bars knives, these A2607 bars knives. You can trade 8 of them for an MP5, which seems like an okay deal because they're only worth like 2 or 3k each when you sell them to Jaeger. But you do need 6 of these found in raid for a Punisher quest later on. So I'd rather just keep the 6. Again, it's using that whole quest items found in raid, figuring out what you need to keep, what you need to get rid of, because stash space will be a huge thing for you. Moving on, I don't think anyone else sells anything worth getting. It is worth trying to farm up items to get certain items here. So like the elite pliers and the screwdriver can get you an MP133 tactical, which has most of the stuff for the gunsmith part 1 quest apart from the pistol grip, which you can find in raid. Similarly, you can get the 4 stock and mounts as well for a hard drive. So yeah, it's up to you how you want to go about it. He doesn't really sell a lot of level 1 stuff that's worth it. These trades probably won't be here at the start of wipe anyway. At the moment, he's just trying to get rid of everyone's graphics cards. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'd mainly run that. You can run an ADAR. You can get this ADAR actually, which again I'll just use the money to show. Oh gosh, there is a low profile gas block that Mechanic sells, and wouldn't you know it, I probably, is that it? Low profile front sight. Yeah, that's probably it. No, that's not it. Maybe that's it. Oh gosh. It would be easier if I checked these beforehand, but why would I do that? That's sounds like something a smart person would do. There it is, Mark 12 low profile gas block. Boom. So most people think you can't get a sight on radar until level 10. Well, I'm here to tell you that those people don't know what they're talking about. Basically, you take your front sight off, find that low profile Mark 12 that we were talking about, and slap that bad boy on. And then you're free to chuck the same scope, or the EKP Cobra sight, straight on. And it'll be accurate, and you won't have this crazy huge front sight in the way. And I don't think... oh, yeah, actually, Peacekeeper would sell Stanag 30 rounders, which he does. Excellent. And you can just run that M855 ammo, the green tip there. Yeah, that's what I'd be running. And that gives you a single shot, fairly damn accurate, NATO gun. Fairly cheap, 40k for it, 45 or, well, 50 total, I suppose, with the sight. Isn't too great when you consider you can run the AK, but, it's up to you. Run what you want. So you can take you up the 10 rounder and chuck in one of the 30s from the M4s that you got. Boom. Excellent gun. This will carry right through to the mid game, and all you really need to do is when you hit level 10, maybe add a suppressor, put on a sight with a bit of magnification, and use better ammo. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world. Most people sleep on the M8556A1 ammo as well, so the majority of the player base likes to get meta M4s because that is the meta, something that sprays very fast. So M4s or HKs or Vectors or MP7s, and just run top tier ammo. Not so much this SSA AP, but the M855 and the M995 ammo. But the M856A1, people sleep on it a lot. To me, it works bloody well right up to the mid game because you're running into people with tier 4 armor. This will quickly demolish tier 4 armor. And yeah, it's well cheaper. So at the moment, 55A1, oh geez, it was like 3,200 around last night, whereas 856A1's like 200 around. So, it's economy of scale. Like, do you want them dead 100%? Get the 55A1 or, well, 995, I suppose. But if you're on a budget or just learning the game, use the lesser um, economic hit, I suppose. So what we can do is equip that one across there now. I wouldn't run the Packer. I do recommend new players run it, but basically my first raid I'll be going for big loot. So I'll be taking pretty much most of this off. Now, meds that I take in a raid. So I do bring painkillers, but I should mention that you start with a Vaseline. So you get 6 uses out of it. It does sap your hydration and energy, but it gives you 5 minutes of pain relief. So I recommend that as your starting painkiller because regular painkillers destroy your hydration and they only last 80 seconds. Painkiller effect basically lets you walk or run or whatever, and like on black legs, it removes the effects of pain essentially and lets you continue to play without going too far into the ramblings here. What I would recommend is, well, I'd run hemostats, but most people should always bring like an Esmark and a army bandage. So army bandages stop light bleeds, Esmark stop heavy bleeds. You can also run the hemostats, which stop 3 heavy bleeds. And there's probably some regular bandages, here as well, which stop 1 light bleed. So these are the sort of meds that I'd take in a raid. Usually I take a Propofol too because they gift you 2, which is pretty damn amazing, which works as a painkiller and health regen for 4 minutes. So that's always nice. Surgery kit, so CMS kit lets you fix blacked out limbs. It's up to you whether you take it or not. If you're taking a lot of painkillers and you've got like enough HP heals, so you can heal 220 with a car kit, which I would put into my rig. And I'd usually put like an IFAK as my backup as well. So the car kit can stop light bleeds and it can heal up 220 health. The IFAK can also stop a heavy bleed, even though it takes out most of the HP of the IFAK. It can stop light bleeds and it can heal up 300 health total. So that's essentially what I'd take in a raid with a splint. Splints for fractures, I should say. This one has 5 uses. The aluminium splint, the regular one just has the 1 use. Basically, if you're going to use the multi-use ones early, such as the IFAKs, the Saliwas, not so much the car kits, but like surgery kits, always in your gamma container sort of thing. They're not expensive when you get to level 10. It's just you don't really want to gift the guy that you just put 10 rounds into a way to heal himself as well. So what I typically would go in with is something like this, with either the CMS in there as well and like a splint here, or no splint there and just have the 5-use splint there. That gives you a good mix. It lets you take 3 random other items out of the raid as well. But one of those slots would usually be taken up by a stack of extra ammo as well. Just another handy hint, you can chamber around before raid, so realistically that will be 31 rounds total. So 1 in the chamber and 30 in the magazine. It's up to you whether you do it or not. I just like doing it because I'm a bit anal. My sort of starting kit is essentially that. Always have a headset. I'm not a big fan of contacts, so I'll probably take the razors. And the biggest backpack I can use, mainly because I'll be going for big loot. If I die, I die, and I work sort of down through my stash. Other people try to work up, but you play however you want. You can take grenades if you want because you do start with grenades. I'm not a big fan of using M67s, mainly because until you can get them in big numbers, I don't like having them. Zarya's, for your first raid, you can have a couple of flash grenades or something like that. But yeah, you've got some RGDs as well. I thought you had some F1s as well, but obviously not. So that's pretty much what I bring into my first raid and lose the hat. And yeah, I'd sort of snowball it from there. That's pretty much all the advice I can give, apart from check your key bindings and check your system settings. Quick overview of the system settings: if you want the, I suppose, Tarkov to run as well as it can. If you're using 16 gig of RAM now, I'd recommend at least trying the auto RAM cleaner for one raid just to see if it works. If you also receive stutters, I'd try the use only physical cores, even though the hyper-threading issues that we had in the past are no longer a relevant thing. With your standard graphics settings, I suppose, I've just sort of downgraded my monitor for the moment, so we are on 1920 by 1080. Doesn't matter overly too much. I don't like running a lot of big things because my post effects is fairly good at boosting colors, so I just keep textures on high, shadows on low, and overall visibility I leave it about 1,000. If you're making shots longer than 1,000 meters, good on you. My longest was about 600, and that was pretty bloody far. And we've also had the game FPS limits increased here. So this used to be 60, and you used to have to uncap your FPS by enabling VSync, but you don't have to do that anymore. So by all means, experiment with your graphic settings. Post effects is what I've been using lately. It's good during the day, but it is a bit bloody bright. Good during the night, but it's a bit bright during the day. Usually I pop that down to 30. But it just depends what map you're playing as well. And again, it's one of those things where you can try it out and sort of test what you like and see if it works and all that sort of stuff. Sound, if you don't want to be deafened by the loudest bit of music you'll ever hear in your freaking life, I untick music on raid end, just so when you extract you don't hear dun 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 dun. And binaural sound I leave on, which should be the 3D sound, which works great in Tarkov. Wink, wink. Apart from that, I keep my controls fairly standard. I do use the mouse a bit, but yeah, it seems to work fairly happily. The FOV is a bit of a contended point as well. Some people have it on max, so I used to have it on max all the time. It doesn't overly matter. Some people recommend 59 because that matches up to what first-person shooters typically have. It's up to you. Most of the weird issues with guns not shooting where you put the red dot are solved. So put it on max, put it on 69, put it on 59, put it on 50. I don't care. Just enjoy playing your game. The only other tip that I can think of off the top of my head is never go into raid without something covering your ugly ass mug. So if we go to overall here, look at that giant white head. That'd stand out like something chronic in a bush, wouldn't it? So you can take this lower half mask off and put the balaclava on, and then suddenly you don't look as crazy in a bush. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Go into raid. You can also test out offline mode. So over you select your map and enable offline mode. You can enable PvE. Put the AI as online. Put them on hard. Put them on impossible, easy, whatever. Put the amount as ridiculous. Enable the bosses, whatever you want to do, and you can go into raid. Otherwise, you can just go in, not enable offline, literally go in online, which will take you to the insurance screen where you can select who's going to insure your crap. Select what you want insured. If you select your rig, it'll select everything it can in the rig. Again, consumables, such as grenades, car kit, med kits, I should say, and anything in your mag, so your ammo as well, will not be saved. Prapor just slurps your ammo up. You pay to insure it, jump into the raid, and that's pretty much it. Your next screen, so if we just go next, we'll show who's in the lobby. So if you want to sort of meet up with friends, go ahead and do that. And that's pretty much it. The only other thing that I can think of now that I've had another thought is your scav raids. So every 20 minutes, I want to say, you can do a scav raid where you spawn in as a scav, which basically means you spawn in with typically less than 20 minutes of raid left, usually around that sort of mark, and you can just go around and loot. The idea is to scavenge, now that they've added heavy bleeds and light well, there were always light bleeds, I suppose. But now that they've added the heavy bleeds as well, you typically don't have enough meds that you can take fights. And hopefully with this patch, there'll be Scav Karma where if you're an asshole and you just keep killing each other, you'll get in trouble for it. Your Scav will get progressively worse geared until you've just got nothing and you just want to not play your Scav, which hopefully, I don't know, the amount of asshole player Scavs around is pretty high. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you have any questions, chuck it in the comments. Happy to answer any. What I typically do is your melee and your pouch always come out of raid with you when you die. So if you take a knife in raid, like you can take one in raid, but I typically don't get knife kills, so I just take one off a scav or a, whatever, and take it out because it's just free money. But what I typically do is sell quite a bit of this stuff anyway, and sort of tidy up the stash a bit for the future. But I'll leave it at that. And yeah, any questions, chuck them in the comments. And yeah, have fun in your raids. Cheers. Bye.